The next concept we are talking about from chapter 9 is deficient demand and deflationary gap. So before we talk about this diagram, first let's understand the explanation, the terms deficient demand and deflationary gap. Basically, deflationary gap is caused by deficient demand. So what is deficient demand? Deficient demand is less. But what kind of demand is less? The aggregate demand is less than the aggregate supply required for full employment equilibrium level of output. So this deficient demand leads to a situation of deflationary gap. And what is deflationary gap? Deflationary gap is when the actual aggregate demand falls short of the aggregate demand for required for maintaining full employment level of output. Please be very careful. Deficient demand is quoted in terms of aggregate demand and aggregate supply, and deflationary gap is quoted in terms of actual aggregate demand and that which is required for maintaining full employment level of equilibrium output. So explaining the graph, first we label the x and y axis. On x axis we show income, output and employment. On y axis we have shown aggregate demand. This is a 45-degree line showing the aggregate supply curve, and this is our aggregate demand curve. The original equilibrium is at point E, where the aggregate demand intersects the aggregate supply curve, and we all have studied that aggregate demand is equal to C plus I. So this is the full employment level, equilibrium level of output. No other point is the full employment equilibrium level of output. Now, case for understanding deflationary gap is, suppose the aggregate demand curve shifts down. Parallel shift of the aggregate demand curve shows that there is change in I. Due to this, the new equilibrium will be established at point F, where your 45-degree line and the aggregate demand curve intersect each other. But as we have studied just a minute ago, that the original equilibrium, the full employment equilibrium, is at point E. Now, because of the decrease in I, the equilibrium has shifted to F. But F is not the full employment equilibrium. E is the full employment equilibrium. So the gap EG is nothing but your deflationary gap. The gap EG, which is caused because of change in I, is nothing but your deflationary gap. Now, what are the reasons for deflationary gap? This is what we are going to study. So the reasons for deflationary gap or deficient demand is, first one, decrease in propensity to consume. Second one, increase in taxes. Third reason, decrease in government expenditure. Fourth reason, fall in investment expenditure. Fifth reason, increase in imports. And sixth reason, due to fall in exports. Explaining the first reason for deficient demand is decrease in propensity to consume. That is, the consumption expenditure has fallen down due to certain reasons. The consumption expenditure has decreased due to certain reasons, and if consumption expenditure decreases, that would become one of the reasons for deficient demand. The second reason is taxes have increased. If taxes increase, the percentage of income which is coming in person's hand will decrease. The personal disposable income will decrease. If there's less income in the hands of the person, so less purchasing power, so the demand in the market would go down. So this is the second reason for deficient demand. The third reason is decrease in government expenditure. We know that the government spends on various things. Okay, so if there's decrease in public expenditure, which means less money being spent by the government. Less money being spent by the government means less money coming into the hands of the people, which becomes the third reason for deficient demand. The fourth reason is fall in investment expenditure. Now, we have studied that rate of interest and investment are inversely proportional. If rate of interest will increase, investment will go down. So that is yet another reason for deficient demand being created in the market. The fifth reason for deficient demand in the market is rise in imports. Now, rise in imports may occur because international prices have become competitive or international prices have become less. International prices have become competitive or international prices have become less compared to the locally produced goods. So there will be less demand for locally produced goods and more demand for imports. So that's another reason for deficient demand. The last reason for deficient demand is reduction in exports. Reduction in exports may be caused because of our products are highly priced compared to the products available in the international market, or due to increase in exchange rate for the domestic currency. So that makes our products expensive. So that's yet another reason for decrease in demand or causing deficient demand. The next part of this presentation is what is the impact of deficient demand. So the impact of deficient demand has to be studied in terms of its impact on output, its impact on employment, and its impact on prices. Talking about the first thing, that is impact on output, because people are not buying. If people are not buying, inventory is increasing. And if inventory is increasing, then the producers would like to produce less, and producers will like to produce less because there's a lot of stock which is lying unsold. If they are going to produce less, it's going to have an impact on employment, because the producers would like to remove some people because lesser production they have to do on account of lesser demand in the market. So there will be increase in unemployment in the economy. The last impact is in terms of prices. Because of the fall in prices, is occurring because people are not buying goods. So producers are trying to push the good in the market in the hands of the consumers by reducing the prices. And because of lack of aggregate demand and for goods and services, the prices will fall down and on account of deficient demand. So when we are doing this topic, please remember you must know the definition of deficient demand, deflationary gap, reasons for deficient demand, and impact of deficient demand.